Hey everyone, Jawad here with Hit the Apex podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Hello there, welcome. Not long to go now. 7 days. 7 days until the first practice session for F1 for the new season. We've had to wait this long. Austria, can't wait. It's been so, I kind of felt like this was the new normal where there was no motorsport or no sport for a while, and then, we got some sports back, people watching again, and now the racing is restarting, and we've got Supercars on this weekend as well, the V8 Supercar Championship, which will be exciting, and I'm going to talk a bit more about it as promised. A couple of weeks ago I said I'd do a proper preview for it on the week of, so that'll come a bit later on, but yeah, we've kind of things are moving along. Things are moving along. It's been a rough couple of weeks. I won't lie. I wanted to start off anyway by checking in on you guys, see how you're doing, but also check myself in as well, because it's been weird. It's been a bit of a downer. Let's not beat around the bush. I guess quite a few things going on behind the scenes personally as well. Doesn't help when there's been a second wave of coronavirus spiking all over Melbourne where I live, and the great toilet paper epidemic part 2 has begun, but I guess the supermarkets I think have got onto it early and put the limits back on for how many each customer can buy, but that doesn't stop people, because I saw a mother in the supermarket the other day, brought her 2 young kids with her, and kids I guess count as individual customers too, so while the mum grabs one pack, a jumbo pack for herself, here you go kids, you grab one each too. So really, it's just pathetic behaviour, this, and I didn't think we would be going through this again, but the second wave of COVID as well has just been a real downer, because here we were doing the right thing, or a certain let's say majority of us, or I don't know, but everyone I know, they've been doing the right thing because we want to reduce infections, this and that, and try and evolve the way or adapt to this new way of living where you have to socially distance. When you go into a shop, you got to sanitize, you've got to do this, you got to do that. But as the restrictions were kind of slowly being lifted, it's kind of like, okay, you're dealing with a bunch of children. So you got the government on one hand who have lifted some restrictions, or they're easing back on certain things and saying, but still take precaution, because this thing isn't fully done and dusted. And guess what the population decides to do? Like little children, you give them a little bit of leeway, or you give them a little bit of, oh yeah, you can do this now. They just go and do whatever they want. There's big gatherings happening, even if it is family gatherings, but that's the main source of the transmissions. That's what's being said. And when you look at the clusters and in the particular areas as well, that it's really spiking. There's a few people that I'm really concerned about who either live in those areas or work. So they're not there, for fun. They're there either because they're working, or, they live there, and they've basically got to be extra careful with what's going on. So it's just, the feeling of disappointment when reading ABC News Monday morning or Sunday night, last week, and them saying, oh yeah, so it's spiked in these areas. We're actually going to enforce some of those restrictions again that we had lifted a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where you can't have more than 5 people come to your place or whatever, and it just, here we go again. And then the toilet paper thing too, it's just, come on guys, come on. And not only that, Alex Zanardi, the crash we heard, that was pretty shocking. It's like as if things couldn't get bad enough this year. You know, we don't want to lose a legend such as Alex Zanardi, who, of course, you know, IndyCar kart champion, raced in Formula One. Unfortunately, lost both of his legs in an accident, but that didn't stop him. He went on to become a Paralympian, doing hand cycling, and won some gold medals as well as a result of it. And yeah, hand bike crash, unfortunately, has left him in ICU. Condition still, I guess, serious but stable. And the family have said that there's not going to be any updates unless there's some kind of significant change to that condition. So that was a real, you know, shocker as well. That gets you. It's like, you know, someone as strong as Zanardi, you know, and this happens. You know, why not just cancel 2020 at this stage with all the bad stuff going on? And then more personally, I guess, a really, 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 really good friend of mine, mentor, boss as well, my manager. She unfortunately had to leave town, head back home out west to Perth because of her partner's work. All, you know, I guess you can contribute to the virus and everything, the pandemic. So there was a lot of emotion around that amongst all of us over the more so last week, given that it was the week that they were going to leave. But, you know, we caught up properly. We spent as much time as we could. Not like, you know, we're not going to be talking to each other and interacting or anything like that, but just not having that presence around you as regularly as it was for the last almost 2 years is definitely going to be a challenge. But, you know, we love challenges, and she would say as well, you know, you gotta just take risks, take the challenge, and you know, get through it. You know, things will be fine. So, you know, that as well, I guess there was a lot of emotion around that, and, you know, as well for her as well, because it's her dream job that she was essentially leaving to, you know, sacrificing to go back over there. But yeah, you know, miss you, man. hope you listen to this, and yeah, you know, really miss you already. So, but we'll be in touch, so don't fret, no one's forgotten about you. And as well, like, just, it's very negative start. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is what's been going on. You know, this is me checking in what's going on with NASCAR, Bubba Wallace. Like, I'm not a big NASCAR fan. I don't watch NASCAR at all. But what happened this week with the well, supposedly there was a noose found in his garage at Talladega, and, you know, he's already been in the headlines because of his stance against racism there in America. And NASCAR, as you know, is a very, very right-wing political, like, the fans, really, I guess you could say, because NASCAR itself now is uniting behind Bubba, being, you know, the only African American driver in the series. You know, they want to stamp out racism altogether, and they got behind Bubba Wallace for, you know, when he put the Black Lives Matter on his car, the livery, and also wearing the t-shirt as well. So it was thought that there was a noose found in the garage that he was going to be in Talladega. There was, you know, it all blew up as being a hate crime, or, you know, a big, you know, something like that. They got the FBI in, they investigated, and then concluded that it wasn't a hate crime, unfortunately. And as a result of that, there was a lot more hate coming out, I guess, from this particular group of, you know, particular fan base with particular political leanings towards Bubba, saying that he basically staged it and everything, which I don't believe is true whatsoever. But I guess what has come out of this, you know, and I don't know why people are questioning his integrity. Well, I do know why, but it should not be the case. This is the point that they're trying to raise the awareness around, is that, these people, the black people, African Americans, they've been targeted as part of this systemic racism for years and years and years and years and years. And something's got to change, and NASCAR uniting behind their driver is such a great gesture. And regardless of whether the FBI determined that this wasn't a hate crime, the fact that, NASCAR itself has raised the awareness and united behind their driver shows a big step forward. And hopefully we'll see that elsewhere too. I was talking to a friend about the NFL and how it's sad in a way that, a couple of years ago when we had the Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem, how he basically lost his career as a result of that back then, though if he had done that now, there would be more people that would have supported him. So it's a thing where, there should have been support for this in the first place, which there wasn't. But the positive out of this is that, the support is there. Whether it's going to stay there is going to be something that, we've all got to collectively watch, because it's important. You can't just get behind this cause for 10 minutes and then expect things to be okay. It's got to be an ongoing thing. And this is why a little bit more light and a bit more colour coming into F1 with, them embracing the rainbow, this new We Races One this new We Races One scheme that they've started, or movement, you could say, that they've started to address inequality and to promote diversity within the sport. It's very innovative. F1 is the world leader for innovation in motorsport. And I guess along with their push for sustainability as well, to go carbon neutral by 2030 and, between 2025 and 2030, this is another feather in their cap that they can say that they're pushing for, increased diversity, whether it's in racing teams, whether it's the drivers, whether it's the media. It's so good to see. And I guess this is all off the back of Lewis Hamilton calling out, for a lack of voices amongst the F1 community, all the other drivers not really ever having a say or not voicing their concerns or opinions on this sort of thing. And I did mention last time how after he did that publicly, that, drivers like Daniel Ricciardo, Charles Leclerc, they all got behind him and said, we don't, we condemn this, racism. We don't want to see that, and we're going to support you. So it's been good to see Hamilton as well out there protesting over the weekend, of course, wearing a mask and everything as well to make sure he abides by the COVID rules. And he started his own commission as well, the Hamilton Commission, to try and, help underprivileged African American children or black children to get into motorsport, find pathways, whether it's through school, for engineering or for anything, basically to get them into the industry. So, and then with F1's own diversity task force as well, and Chase Carey himself, so Chase Carey, the CEO himself, donating $1 million out of his own pocket to the foundation as well, shows that they're not really beating around the bush. And you could beat them up for saying, how come you didn't do this before? But it's no better time now to do it. And the fact that they've, pledged this level of commitment already for this sounds like that they're going to be in it for the long run, which is what we want to see. We don't want to see someone just doing it for 10 minutes or whatever, while it's on trend, something like that. No, this has to be something that changes forever. And if you're not going to get behind it, well, tough, because as a society, we should be sick of seeing racism. We should be sick of seeing a lack of diversity. We should be sick of all the inequality going on out there. So the time is now to get behind it. So, and this is why, even though we went through all those years, where F1 was in the doldrums and, basically just a cash cow, Bernie Ecclestone and all that in charge, Liberty Media taking over. I know there's critics out there, and some of them, I don't know why, they just seem to have a personal vendetta or something like that against them, but what they're doing goes beyond racing. Ultimately racing is their product, but they're trying to build a brand, and also I think it's innovation. And because F1's all about innovation, in motorsport, and it could be in society as well, which, obviously the motorsport link, how they innovate their technology to bring over to road cars. Well, maybe a cultural and societal change can be innovated through the Formula One world and brought through to greater society as well. Right, so that gets that off my chest. Seriously, I'm all still all smiles and all good, but yeah, it's you have those weeks or spells where you feel a bit down because of multiple things. But seriously, don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid to, as I said last time, to call out this sort of stuff when you see it, whether it's inequality or racism. Support each other. That's the best thing we can do through this time. And don't go out there and buy all the toilet paper in the world, because seriously, that's not funny. If you're worried about that sort of thing, and I said this months ago, call a plumber, get a bidet installed. That's it. All right, let's talk some actual car racing now. And as much as I love talking about all the other stuff, I am still pretty much, a motorsport racing podcast as well. So I'm not going to get too political all the time, but I feel this is, as I said before, the best time to be talking about that sort of stuff, starting the conversation, and also, getting other people involved as well to speak up on this sort of thing, because, as Hamilton said, there's, or basically implied, that there's no point staying quiet about it, because staying quiet's not going to achieve anything. Right, so Supercars, the Sydney SuperSprint this weekend, Eastern Creek. And every time I think of Eastern Creek, I think one of the best memories any Supercars fan will have of Eastern Creek is the Shriek at the Creek incident back in 2003. If you're not familiar with it, go onto YouTube, type in Shriek at the Creek, and you'll see Mark Scaife having a go at his old mate Russell Ingall. It's probably the most funniest someone's looked when they're angry. It probably wasn't, well, it wasn't funny at the time, obviously, because, Scaife was pretty upset that Ingall had punted him off and then went on to continue racing. But when you look back at it, it's just one of those funny highlights that you could just watch on repeat and laugh over and over again. So we're back there at Eastern Creek, first round, obviously, since Adelaide. You want to count the couple of practice sessions and qualifying that we had at the Australian Grand Prix, go ahead. I guess the qualifying results still stand, and the two Red Bull guys, Jamie Whincup and Shane Van Gisbergen, will keep those pole positions. But before getting into the actual race preview, let's talk about the revised calendar. So this was released last week, where Supercars modified or edited the calendar, which was originally meant to go into 2021. We were going to have a race in New Zealand, Pukekohe, and then finishing off with a second round at Bathurst being a sprint round. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. The revised calendar will see the season end on December 13 with a second race here at Eastern Creek. It's going to be a night race. They're going to have the permanent lighting fixtures finished by then, which they were planning on doing a night race anyway this year before we had the whole pandemic thing, but not being able to do a night race now, that's because the lighting isn't finished. So this weekend, remember, there is no night race. It's just during the day as normal, but we're going to have a night race at this same track later in the year. So that's December 13. We'll finish off the season. Other big shifts, of course, is Sandown, so that'll move back to the pre-Bathurst slot in September. Originally, Sandown was meant to be on that December 13 weekend, but obviously now because of the finale in Sydney, we're having to put Sandown before Bathurst, as it's always been, but it's going to be a sprint round because of all the social distancing rules and the new way that they're going racing as well, with the reduced crews and everything. So at this stage, Bathurst looks likely to be the only endurance race, the Bathurst 1000. Unfortunately, because of Sandown moving, there's been some redundancies, or there's been some unfortunate losses, you could say. Redundancies, okay. Some losses there with the Bend Motorsport Park unfortunately being dumped off the calendar. There's been a lot of, I guess, angst about that, obviously, from the owners of the Bend, the Shaheen family, who poured, millions and millions of dollars into this facility. We've been there twice for Supercars. We had the test there, pre-season test there this year as well. And, this year they were supposed to have the Bend 500, the pre-Bathurst Enduro at the Bend, and for no real reason, I guess, apart from, having to shift Sandown into the pre-Bathurst slot, did the Bend get dumped. And of course Auckland as well, with international travel still looking a bit sticky, but the fact that you wouldn't be able to squeeze it in this revised calendar anywhere anyway. And I guess one way you could look at also the Bend not being on the calendar, when you look at all the events that they've put together, and also the spacing between them as well, is quite important. And I think they've done a good job there to make sure that there's adequate space. Like, you could have squeezed the Bend in, and I know Joshua Kerr wrote an article, or not an article, sorry, he just commented. It was almost like an article within an article. It was my article during the week that I did for the Raw, and talking about how, we're going back racing, how exciting it is. And he wrote about, how it could have fit in on a date in August. Technically, yes, it could have, but I guess with all the turnarounds and also the logistics, and Supercars, apart from when they go overseas, they travel by road as well. I think they probably would have wanted a little bit of a break in that period. So it's unfortunate, yes. I feel really sorry for the guys at the Bend, for South Australia. The Bend, I've been there. I love it. It's hard to understand the circuit still. I haven't even learnt it, but it's still a great place, and they've done a good job to make it a world-class facility. So sad that, it won't be on the calendar. Sad Auckland won't be on the calendar either, but I guess that's the reality we're living in at the moment, where sacrifices have to be made. And I guess all this kind of stems from, broadcast and sponsor arrangements, which, are set to conclude on the 31st of December. So if we were to race into 2021, you would have to draw up completely new arrangements and agreements and everything. So the broadcaster, I guess, pushed for it, and some sponsors as well. One of them, I'm led to believe, is Holden, of course, with their factory arrangement with the Red Bull Holden Racing Team concluding at the end of this year, so December 31st. So it wouldn't be viable for them to then do 2 rounds next year of this same season as just the Red Bull team, Red Bull Racing Australia. That's what they used to be called. I had to think for a while, a couple of weeks ago, when I was thinking, what are they going to be called when Holden are gone? What were they called beforehand? Obviously they're 888 Race Engineering, but their team under Red Bull, it was Red Bull Racing Australia, and I did not have to look that up either. It just came to me then. So there you go. And we've had the formats confirmed for Winton as well. So there'll be 3 races like there are this weekend in Sydney. Winton, obviously, the second round after this COVID break, will be coming in July. 3 races, which are going to be 35 laps each. 2 practice sessions on the Saturday, a top 10 shootout as well on Saturday, and then 2 qualifying sessions for the 2 races on Sunday. So not too dissimilar, I should say, than what we have for Sydney this weekend, obviously with a top 15 shootout instead, and then the 3 races, which have been reduced from 33 laps to 32, by the way. So that was another bit of news coming during the week. And no support categories either this weekend, but we will have support categories at Winton. So big news, I guess, if you follow Super 2, which is the development series for Supercars, the feeder series, they've combined grids with the newly formed Super 3 category, which has kind of come from the V8 touring cars series, I think, stem from that. So they're going to be racing this year as a combined grid, obviously like using a class system and everything as you do in, World Endurance Championship or IMSA. So they'll be there, Porsche Carrera Cup and the Toyota 86 series as well, which has been pretty exciting to watch over the last few years. So some good news, I guess, for the support categories too. They'll be back on track come Winton. So as for Sydney this weekend, well, I guess expect a lot of rustiness, I guess. A few surprises even. That's what I was saying in the preview this week, that I reckon because of the layoff, a lot of drivers probably have not ever experienced a time off like this where they don't go racing for months and months, and then they come back and it's like, whoa, big shock to the system. And we saw that in IndyCar as well, and of course for the rookies during the IndyCar race at Texas a few weeks ago, it was a rough weekend and reduced running time as well, so the weekend's been condensed into 2 days, so the 2 practice sessions, and then of course the rookies get their rookie only session to start off with there only in Sydney, so they're going to have to make the most of that. And given how many cars are fast at the moment, or we have seen that have been fast so far this year, I think experience is going to be crucial. So I don't think guys like your Whincups, Van Gisbergens, McLaughlins and all that, Mosterts, they might not be as rusty as some of the other guys, but don't be surprised if we do see mistakes, because, this is a whole new, I guess, way we're going racing with the supercars, of course, having less pit crew on hand, so 6 instead of 8 per car, less data as well with the data logging ban that they've enforced. So that's where I think the more experienced drivers might be able to come out at the front. You separate the men from the boys a little bit, because they've done racing before without all that data, and they've got good engineers by their side, and we've seen a few engineering reshuffles as well. Scott Pye, for example, getting Phil Keed on board, and Phil Keed's got a lot of experience. He used to be Fabian Coulthard's engineer, of course, and I guess lack of personnel that is allowed on site means that some of these guys are going to have to do extra work. Barry Ryan, the CEO of Erebus Motorsport, you could say V8 Supercars version of Gunther Steiner. If you've seen the Erebus doco on YouTube, Inside Line, really, really good, really insightful. And the thing that really made it for me was the fact that 2019 was not a year that Erebus did super well, and it was a bit of a downer of a year, given that they were supposed to be dark horses for the championship and all that, and it really showed how they built character. And Barry Ryan, Angry Baz or whatever nicknames they have for him, but to me it just reminded me so much of Gunther Steiner's portrayal in the Netflix F1 series. So go check out that if you haven't, or if you're new to supercars, see the inner workings of a supercars team. And Erebus is probably the perfect team to do it. Family team, tightly knit, and as much Baz seems like a bit of a bully, he kind of explains it perfectly that we're all here to win, we're all driven by this, and I don't see him as a bully or anything like that. But some people obviously a bit more sensitive to that sort of thing. So great doco, check that out it's on YouTube, so that's there. But Barry Ryan, going back to what I was saying before, Barry saying that, he and his crew chief, Dennis, might have to do, things like refuel, fuel the cars and stuff like that. Obviously not refueling during the pit stops, because that's not allowed, but, like doing simple things like that around the garage, because they can't have as many people on site as they did. So I think this is where some of the more experienced teams and crews and drivers are going to come to the fore. So they're going to be fueled from the start of the race, so only one stop will be required, as I said last time, for tyres during the race, so they have to change a minimum of 2 tyres per car. Pit stops, I guess, even though it's just the one pit stop, is still going to be the focus. Go back to Adelaide. I know it seems like an eon ago, but it's not. You can just watch the highlights there, again, as I said, on YouTube or something. And the pit stops were not perfect, even for the top teams, So Sunday race, McLaughlin, I guess his crew were caught napping when they were refueling, and Van Gisbergen got out ahead of him. And then Van Gisbergen's crew at Red Bull didn't fully fuel the car properly in the second stop, which cost him the win. So it went back to McLaughlin there. So those guys weren't perfect. Geez, I don't know speech impediment much. Those guys weren't perfect in Adelaide, but I guess those are going to be race-defining mistakes in this new format that we're going to have. And qualifying, I think, will be very important as well, because obviously it's a shorter race, only one pit stop involved. There's not going to be much room for strategic passing. It's all going to have to be done on track, and I guess whoever qualifies towards the sharper end of the grid is going to have a bit of an advantage. And some of the guys who have been quick here in the past, Scott McLaughlin, obviously, Chaz Mostert as well is a name that comes up there. And the reason I say that is because when you look at the stats and everything, both of them share the last 10 pole positions at this track. So how's that for something? And then when you look at Scott McLaughlin's total at this track, mind you, he's only been racing since 2013 full-time in Supercars. He's got 10 pole positions here in total. And that goes back to when he was at Gary Rogers Motorsport racing a Volvo. He's super quick. And Sydney Motorsport Park, for those who are not familiar, is a driver's circuit, what you would call a driver's circuit. It's very fast, it's flowing, a lot of high-speed corners, long corners, so completely different to Adelaide, which is a street track, stop-start, 90-degree corners. So drivers like McLaughlin and Mostert, who usually shine on these sort of circuits, no matter what car they're in, are always going to be quick here. So whether that's going to help them in the race, I guess, will be seen when we get there. But given the fact that we've kind of had a bit of an equaliser going into this year with the parity changes to put both the Commodore and the Mustang on par with each other, the control shock absorber coming in as well, I reckon it's going to be much more unpredictable, even though you could say, Red Bull and Shell V-Power Racing, DJR Team Penske will be there or thereabouts. But my eye, I guess, will be on, guys like Walkinshaw and Andretti United, which has Mostert, Tickford as well, who was so quick in the opening rounds. Cameron Waters got on the podium. Again, you got to say what a shame about Will Davison, because he was quick in that Milwaukee Tools car for the opening 2 rounds, or like 1.5 rounds, because of the cancellation at the Australian Grand Prix. But in the practice sessions and the qualifying sessions that they did do, he was quick in there. So I guess James Courtney, who will step into that car now this weekend with new sponsor, obviously Boost Mobile, but they're going to have the same crew. It's going to be the same car and everything. So he's stepping into a fast car. We'll see what he can do with that. And I think it's been a bit of a while since we've seen JC in a fast car. So hopefully he's able to get the performance out of it that he needs. And also Kelly Racing too. They've been quite solid this year, and it's been it was a huge off-season, like proper off-season in, December, January for Kelly Racing, obviously making the switch from the Nissan Altima, which is now no longer racing in Supercars, over to the Ford Mustang, and completely building their own engines as well in-house. So, and we saw the results, I guess, qualifying speed was good for Rick Kelly and Andre Heimgartner. We didn't really get to see the best of them during the races there in Adelaide, but I reckon keep an eye on them this year. They're going to be quick, and I reckon Andre might even sneak through for a maiden win in Supercars. which, sounds weird given he's been around a few years now. He's been at a few different teams. And Rick Kelly, of course, he's always really quick, and he's sitting top 10 in the championship at the moment, after obviously 1 round's worth of racing. Also, Frosty, Mark Winterbottom, and Team 18, just waiting for their form to click together. We've seen flashes of them over the last 12 months. The pole position that they had in Tasmania last year, he's sitting 8th in the championship at the moment after Adelaide. So I reckon those guys are going to be really good to watch this year. And obviously a 2-car team now as well, with Scott Pye being on board. But as far as going back to the front, the Red Bull drivers, as much as, McLaughlin, Mostert, they're the benchmark qualifiers, it's the Red Bull drivers who've really had the good race results here. So the last time we actually raced at Sydney Motorsport Park was 2018, because last year they didn't run the race because they were doing the night race instead over in Perth. So the night race that they had there in 2018, SVG won that. Whincup second, and I think Craig Lowndes third when he was in the third Triple Eight car. So Triple Eight go really good around here, and Shane Van Gisbergen, even back when he was driving for Techno in the VIP Pet Foods days, they were really quick too. So yeah, good form from those guys. I really don't know. I can't really put my finger on who will win this weekend. We've got 3 races, which is going to be exciting. We've got, qualifying top 15 shootout, which I'm just reading that Nick Percat for Brad Jones Racing saying that, expect a couple of surprises because it's the top 15 shootout. And obviously a top 15 shootout's going to go longer because you've got 5 extra cars doing the shootout. So how does that play with track conditions and variables like that? Imagine if the track conditions are the best right at the start of the shootout, because the shootout happens in reverse grid order. So car number 15, car who qualifies in 15th goes out first, gets the best of the track conditions, and then it just falls away for the rest of the session. So maybe they might end up on pole. So you never know. So that's what I mean with these surprises and everything. It's just going to be interesting, and I'm just excited to see them back racing again this weekend. And before we wrap it all up then, so looking at the championship standings, McLaughlin on top, 27 points ahead of Jamie Whincup. And Whincup too, I think I mentioned this last week, how obviously he signed on for another year back in Adelaide, put to bed those talks about whether he will retire at the end of this year or not. And given the fact that we've had this break from racing, I think it kind of prolongs the end for a few drivers, and you could say that all over the world, like people like Daniel Ricciardo saying as well that he's probably going to get a few extra years out of this because of the break that he's taken, and all eyes I guess on Valentino Rossi there in MotoGP, see whether he goes around for another year. Next year it'll have to be on the Petronas Yamaha bike, but he'll be there still on the grid. So Whincup, who is the GOAT of supercars as far as stats are concerned, and just he is the GOAT, seven titles, more than 100 wins, most pole positions. I don't think we're going to see another driver anytime soon that's going to beat him, and that's a discussion I guess to have for another time. And I would love to talk about that, because McLaughlin is someone who you would think would be the person who could take over mantle of those stats, but he's got designs on wanting to go over to America and race an IndyCar there. So maybe if he doesn't, as a result of all this coronavirus nonsense, we might be able to see him here try and have a crack at Whincup 7 titles. But don't discount an 8th title for Whincup, not at all. If you want to put a punt down for this year, even put it down for Whincup. I don't know, I'm not a bookie or a gambler, so I can't tell you the odds. And also Van Gisbergen, his teammate as well, can't be ruled out. So he was the winner of the E-Series that they did, the championship for that. So don't rule him out in the real championship as well, and go after a second, which would be good for Shane. So yeah, I'll be back to, obviously, we'll be back, obviously, but next week I will then wrap up, obviously, what happens in Sydney. I can't wait tomorrow, 10 o'clock or 20 past 10, I think it is, Australian Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have the first practice session, even though it will be just for the rookies. It will be just nice to see some real cars on track, and with no crowds and less media and all that sort of stuff. You can just sit back and hear the cars go round. Be fantastic. So, and remember, check out Shriek at the Creek as well. I might even link it in the description. So before we finish, let's cover some odds and sods, other bits and pieces of news that caught my attention in the last couple of weeks. And shout out to the Regen E-Racing podcast, who gave me a shout out on their show this week. Thank you, boys, as always. And them talking about the restart of Formula E, 6 races that they're going to have at the Berlin venue to finish off the season. They're going to use 3 different layouts of that track. I guess best possible place for it to do it while keeping the Formula E essence, instead of going to a permanent racetrack or something like that. But it sounds nuts, that they're having 6 races in 9 days. I think it's something like that. So August 5th, 6th, then 8th and 9th, and then the 12th and 13th. So I guess, all short and sharp, keeps everyone in the bubble and, finish off this championship so, they can start planning next year's. And I think, the boys did talk about next year's calendar as well and how it will basically start, in 2021. So none of this, 2020 or 2021 season, and because next year they will officially start as a world championship as well, getting that getting that recognition by the FIA. There you go, recognition is the word I'm looking for. This is what happens when you don't talk for a week, do a podcast for a week. You kind of come back and your speech is all over the place, but it'll be regular now, given the fact that we're back racing, and we've got F1 next week as well. So fear not, guys, fear not. Or you could just sit there and laugh at me trying to talk. Whatever. And other bits of Formula E stuff. Driver movements. Pascal Wehrlein quit Mahindra. Alex Lynn will come in to cover him for the Berlin races. Wehrlein hotly tipped to go over to Porsche next year. Obviously, I think Neil Yarni would be the one to make way, unfortunately. But, Wehrlein, really, really quick driver. He's shown glimpses of greatness there at Mahindra, obviously just kind of held back by his machinery. Won that race or that epic race, I should say, not just a race, but that epic race in Mexico. So, good for them. And Rene Rast over to Audi to replace, obviously, Daniel Abt. And we don't need to go over that all again because you're all aware of it, hopefully. If not, listen to, 2 episodes ago that I do the mashup episode with the Regen guys, and we'll go over it once again for you. Good laugh, that one, I think. Just for a bit of dark humour, bit of fun, put that episode on and listen to it. We're getting there, don't worry, we're getting to the end. MotoGP as well, some rider movements. KTM confirming their lineup for 2021, which has, surprised a few people with what's going on over there. So the factory KTM team will see Miguel Oliveira step up next to Brad Binder, and then the Tech 3 team, we've got Danilo Petrucci confirmed alongside Iker Lecuona, who hasn't raced this year, obviously, but he will make his debut in Jerez in July for the Tech 3 team. Danilo Petrucci, good that he's found home in MotoGP. I guess his experience will be important there at the KTM now because the lack of an experienced rider. So Oliveira and Binder at the factory KTM team. Who's missing? Can you guess? Yes, well, Pol Espargaro. I was about to say Aleix, his brother. No, he's firmly nestled away at Aprilia. He's signed a new deal recently as well. Pol Espargaro no longer going to ride for KTM next year. They haven't confirmed, no one's confirmed yet where he's going or what his plans are, but you could hazard a guess that he's going to be confirmed by Repsol Honda next year to race possibly alongside Marc Marquez, which would be kind of unfortunate that, they've brought in his brother Alex Marquez on a 1-year deal. They haven't even raced yet this year, and they've already lined up a replacement for him. Or maybe it could be a Marc Marquez replacement. Who knows? Who knows? There's a lot to talk about in that department. I've just had a few brainwaves now as well that it's kind of like, ooh, I want to talk about this, but I think, I'm kind of going to take it easy this week, not going to do a long one, just a standard 45 minutes. Well, we're at 45 minutes now, so going to be wrapping it up in a second anyway, but as we get back, when MotoGP comes back, I think we'll talk about it a bit more as well. And quickly, with F1 and Austria, so a lot of outrage during the week over the announcement that there's going to be some new graphics that they're going to have on screen. It all looks a bit too much information, I think, or, some people saying that isn't that the job of the commentators to talk about that data and stuff. But yeah, I think I'll just wait to see how it impacts the broadcast before I really sink my teeth into it. So, not that I don't agree with people who disagree with it. I just want to see how it goes, because I like having my live timing screen on the computer or on the phone, and all the information to be played off that, and with the live blogging that I do as well, which will hopefully start up again next week. I'm so excited. With all the live blogging that I do as well for, the races, having that live timing screen is really important. So more information on that would be great. More information on the screen might be a bit like TV screen during the broadcast, might be a bit too distracting, but I guess if they're trying to impress new fans or, draw in people like that, then yeah, we'll wait and see. But I will reserve judgment on it until we see it next week, because 7 days time, free practice 1 in Austria. My Friday nights will finally be complete again. All right, I'm going to leave you. Love and leave you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Check us out on Twitter at Hit the Apex Media. Get in touch as well, which is important. We're on all good podcast platforms. I'm not trying to dominate the world like Dino is on Regen, putting it on every platform available, but I'm on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and I think this week should be on YouTube. Don't what do you call it? Don't take my word for it, but yeah, I did switch podcast hosts during the week, so the hosting platform, so this might end up on YouTube as well. So yeah, you can look us up on YouTube. We've got an account, Hit the Apex Media, which hasn't been used for some time, but maybe it will start getting some use now. Alright guys, stay safe, look after each other, don't buy all the toilet paper in the world, and enjoy your weekends, whether you're watching some racing or not. Ciao.